Welcome to Postpartum. We have Jessica and Cody here with me. We're going to be commenting on the episode that Phil and I did earlier, and they've heard the episode, so they have thoughts to comment on. But I wanted to elaborate on a few things that Phil shared in his episode, because most of it was supposed to be for him to talk to us about his experiences and thoughts and feelings. But the feeling side was a little bit weak. He was a little bit shy with his feelings, and I don't mean shy, I mean like light. He didn't really want to elaborate, and I actually don't know if that was a desire thing or if it was just a man thing, focusing on the facts. I don't know. You were saying something now.
Oh yeah, I don't know exactly why this is the case, but Eden is very similar with a lot of things that Phil said, just in my experience with talking with him, and I almost feel as though sometimes they don't process feelings. I will have to sit down with Eden and really talk him through his emotions because he doesn't know what he's feeling. He's like, here are the facts. That's it. And I'll be like, oh, but why were you upset? He's like, I wasn't upset. I'm like, okay, what were you feeling? He's like, I don't know, just, I guess, frustrated. I don't know.
A synonym of upset.
Yeah. Like, so you were upset? He's like, I was upset. I just didn't like what you did. I'm like, okay, so you were upset.
I don't want to push the envelope.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know if it's a man thing or if it's just Phil and Eden that have.
It's a particular man thing.
Yeah, and maybe that's it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to generalize anyone.
That's true.
Because I married a very sensitive man. He will listen to this, and he will probably not like that I said that, but also agree with me.
Yeah.
Jess, you outed me.
He has no problem talking about his emotions.
That's what it is.
Like,
there are sensitive people and non-sensitive people in all categories. And
yeah.
I chose to marry a non-sensitive man because I dated sensitive men and was not into it. Mm-hmm. So I'm a sensitive woman, and I think I like.
It's good to have balance.
Yeah, it's good to have balance.
Because I'm a less sensitive person.
Maybe that's what it is. They're just matter of fact, and that's okay.
Well, so many times I've said, like in my marriage or in our marriage, I've said to different people or settings, like, I don't really know how we're together. Like, we have a lot more things in common now, like creating this podcast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, it was really like I was trying to figure out things to do with him. Mm-hmm. And sometimes he would do things with me just to appease me, but not like he was like, I am so into dancing now. Like, that didn't happen, you know? It would be like a true act of love to do some of the things that I like. And so I'm like, I don't get it. Like, which is
attractive.
It is. It's really good. But it's just funny how, you know, like you mentioned something as well earlier that about like, oh, how did Phil say it? Like, I'll just figure it out when it happens or something like that. You know, I'll just cross that bridge.
That's something that Eden said too when he talked about the transition to fatherhood, and he was saying it was really hard. In retrospect, it was really difficult because I didn't prepare. And I asked him, why didn't you prepare? And his thought process or his
response?
School of thought at the time was, well, it's gonna happen, and why do anything that I don't need to do before I need to do it,
which is so weird. It's so weird that is common, because even TJ was that as well, and for many years was like, well, if it happens, it happens, and then I'll deal with it. But it's so weird that so many men have that opinion of fatherhood, but like not of other things. Like if we were like, okay, we're gonna go, you know, rock climbing for the first time, you know, whatever, like maybe that's a bad example because you can just go rock climbing with that, but I feel like a lot of men would be like, okay, what are we doing? Where are we going to go? How are we going to get there? What's it going to cost?
Like outside, like if you were outside and you needed your own equipment,
or like, any kind of activity that was like out of the norm. I feel
maybe like planning a trip.
It would be, there would be some like thought involved, and there would be like some, okay, we're going to make sure that we, you know, have a good budget. We don't spend too much, that we, you know what's going to happen or whatever. Like, I feel like a lot of men don't go into everything unprepared, but with fatherhood, it's kind of like, well, everybody has kids, right? So I guess we'll just wing it.
Yeah. When Eden just thought, like, he just assumed I knew. I did for a lot of things. I did do the research.
But because you didn't know.
Because like I didn't know.
You did the research, yeah.
And I had a lot more experience with children, but I also thought, you don't want to do any of this yourself. You don't want to find out. And he's like, oh, I'll just trust you.
What a that makes you feel so loved, but
that's great and all, but what about if you don't agree? And then I'm having to say, well, I did all this research, you don't get an opinion. That's
see that too. That flew with me. That flew with me because I'm like, okay, well, I'm reading all these books and like, you know, I always think of Juno with you know, saying like, oh, I've liked the daddy chapters for you, and she like tries to give the What to Expect book to her husband. But I was reading that book and I'm like, so there's these like sections for dads or whatever, like, do you want to read it? And he's like, no, you know, maybe later or whatever. But yeah, it is now we have the child. If he doesn't know what's going on, he turns to me and he's like, okay, so I'm gonna do this way. Is this how I'm supposed to do it? And I'm just like, yeah, that's cool. So I actually enjoy that role, I guess, because if he read it and interpreted it a different way or had a different opinion and tried to do it a different way from the way I do it, I feel like that would cause a little bit more controversy for the two of us. Because I'd be like, you're doing it wrong. Yeah. Don't do it that way. Do it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think he knows that about me too. So that's probably why he did it.
Yeah, that's true. In my relationship, not usually, but what has come up in the past is that he'll do it one way and then realize he doesn't like it or prefer it or think it's good. And then instead of doing research, he'll just say, oh, I don't like it.
Ugh. Yes. I'm rolling my eyes.
Yeah. That's not fair to just say you don't like it and that is what it is. And we've crossed that road. It's better now, but transitioning to fatherhood, that was something he thought was okay, just to be like, hey, this is not working for me, so we're not going to do it. And why? You need to have a why, and you need to have, and that was another thing where we'd have to kind of like talk through emotions and, okay, you don't have any facts as to why you don't like this, but there's something you're feeling. Yeah. There's a reason. It's just not fact-based.
So I have a thought with the whole, like, it's not working for me thing. I feel like, I mean, Phil and I have had similar conversations, and a response that I have to that is like, yeah, a lot of things aren't working for me, like being a parent. Like it's I don't like it. Yeah, I don't like that. Like there's a lot of things that are just not great, so we have to figure it out, and ideally together to figure out. So that, in my opinion, and not saying that every couple has to take this approach, but I would prefer if we both did research and then collaborated and came up with a game plan. But since it sounds like most of us have been like, did the research that we feel like, to the extent that we feel like, and then we come to our partner saying this is how we want to do it, and, you know, had a few different responses or whatever, that's probably more of the norm. But it just seems like it's just frustrating because I feel like, you know, it isn't ideal. Most of parenting is hard.
And I think it might be helpful if, for anyone listening who might be in that situation where you may be a little frustrated. For me, it was more helpful to come to my husband and say, okay, so I was researching this topic, even breastfeeding. Like he and I talked a lot about breastfeeding, even though he's like not involved, quote unquote, in that in any way. But
he doesn't have boobs.
Right. But you know, he did help a lot, and he does help a lot with that. But I would bring the topic to him and be like, so this is what I read and this is what I'm learning and these are my thoughts. And then he can take what I'm saying and kind of compile some thoughts of his own versus me saying, read this book and then let's talk, you know, or I read this book, so this is how we're going to do it. I think it was a nice middle ground for us to be like, you know, here's a condensed version of the 5 books that I've read on this topic. And let's have, you know, a 20-minute conversation and get your thoughts and then decide what to do. So that worked out for us.
Yeah. Cool. That's good.
One thing I did have, I thought I did have while I was listening to the episode, because I know Phil, I don't know, pretty well as far as parenting goes. I've seen him a lot with the kids. And I just thought it was so funny. Well, I don't know, not funny, haha, but listening to him talk and kind of be a little bit of a Debbie Downer about this situation. But like, I know him and I know how good of a father he is. And I thought that was such an interesting contrast that like the man that you are married to or that you are with before you have your kids is probably not the father that he's going to be. And that's just something that I thought was so interesting. Like if you just listen to this podcast and don't know him at all, you might think like, oh man, that guy sucks as a dad. You know, like there were some things I was like, oh, Phil, don't say that.
You're painting yourself bad.
Yeah. But I mean, and that's how he felt. And that was honest. And that's great because I think a lot of men feel like that and probably don't want to mention that to their wives or their significant others because that's dangerous territory sometimes. But, but it doesn't, but it doesn't come out, you know, in the way that he is with Buddy and Swiss. And so I think that it just gives a little bit of hope, I think, for some people who are like really frustrated and maybe like pregnant and thinking like, oh, is my husband or significant other going to be terrible because they don't want this baby? Well, it might take them a little bit to come around, but they definitely will be positive about it. And in most cases will be a good dad.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. I remember, I don't know if you remember this experience, but I remember coming over to your house and you expressing concern, Brittany, not you, Jessica. Sorry, I should clarify.
That's true.
I remember Brittany came over to her house. I don't remember what for, but you expressed when I came over concern for how Phil is going to be as a dad because he didn't show a lot of interest in kids or in the idea of fatherhood. And I told you, I said, I don't know personally because we weren't
as close
in that. In that.
I'm
yet.
like putting words in your mouth.
No, we weren't. Ian and I had not
you guys.
become parents.
That you meant we is and you and me. Sorry.
No.
I'm sorry.
But I just said, hey, I've seen all my brothers go from a place of being kind of like bachelors and enjoying their selfish lives to transforming into really good fathers. And you're like, oh, okay, that helps a little.
Yeah.
It's the me time. Like guys just have like a certain requirement for that me time and it needs to shrink a little when you have kids. But I don't know. I think, it's hard for that transition when you're used to just being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And then all of a sudden you can't. I had a question for you, Brittany. Did you notice, do you think it was beneficial for Phil to be a stay-at-home dad in the beginning? Because he was for a while, right? Before
like
how
4
long?
months.
Yeah. So how did that go? Do you think that helped him with that transition?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And it wasn't an ideal. I mean, I would venture to say that most mothers would feel it's ideal, or I'm sorry, not ideal to have to go back to work. I know that some are, like I said, it's just probably most moms. But and I was definitely, I might have mentioned this in my episode, I can't remember it anymore, but I was definitely like all growing up, in my head, I can't think of how to say that, sorry. I was of the mentality like I'll be a working mom because I had worked like you, like our whole lives, right? As soon as we could. And it was natural to work. I felt like I was a good employee. And then people would tell me, oh, it will change, which as a side note, you might already know this, like people telling me how things are going to be annoying, right? I'm like, oh, I'll show you. I'm going to hate them, like whatever. And they're like,
don't tell me I'm going to love my kids.
Yeah, I know.
I won't love them just to spite you.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know me. You don't know me. Anyway, so then I had them, and of course that was true, and I was like, I don't want to go back to work. But we decided before we delivered that, or I delivered, whatever,
mutual experience.
Yeah, you're right. Before they exited my body, that I would go back to work for a certain period of time. And it was actually his idea to quit his job, and that's, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it was blah blah blah. Anyway, so it was a good situation for him to quit. It was basically because we couldn't find a babysitter that we liked, and so he would quit and stay home. And then
that's right, because you guys were looking for like a nanny for a bit.
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
Like
and that was actually one detail I can say, that like we found that the income that he was gaining from his job would have basically gone almost all of it to paying for a nanny, and we couldn't find a daycare that had spots open for infants, and I had some hesitancies, and that's a whole nother probably episode that could be about childcare.
How funny, because I remember we were talking about that as an option for me, and I was like, well, financially it just doesn't make sense for me to quit my job and do that. But if I was a stay-at-home mom, maybe I could. 10 years of infertility, I'm like, there's no way. And then I get pregnant, 4 months later or something like that, like after they were born. It's kind of crazy, but anyways.
I know. Yeah, it was about that long after. Yeah, so he decided that, and that was one. It was kind of like, it was interesting that he would even suggest that, because of what we heard his feelings were toward. So it was like, hey, I have this idea that I'm gonna quit the job that I'm comfortable and good at and be with these little infants that I'm not really excited to be around. And I was like, what? What is happening?
Sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, and I was like, yay, will everyone be safe? So that happened, and I think it was really good. I think he bonded with them more during that time, and I think that he felt like he got under his feet about being a parent, you know, and like helped him feel like a superhero. I was like, I don't know what to call it.
Probably gain an appreciation.
Yeah. Yes.
Because that was something Eden didn't have either. An understanding of
like
how difficult it is to stay at home.
Yes.
And I remember talking to Phil and being like, how's it going? He's like, this is hard.
Yes, I know. Hard. Yes.
Yeah, I know it is.
Yeah. He is. I've been grateful. He said a few times that he's grateful for me staying home now. And, you know, I said, well, you know, or whatever. And he said, but I guarantee it's probably harder for you now than it was then. And I appreciated that because it was hard then, like from birth to 4 months old. Like, I mean, he's like, they just laid there, but there was more to that, you know, like there's a lot of emotions. And even though, and to be honest, maybe we'll never know, but maybe it was better for him to be home instead of me. I mean, I did take maternity leave, so it wasn't actually 4 months. It was probably from 3 months to 7 months. But like, he doesn't have the hormones from like the delivery and nursing and all that, but you know, he's still, so I don't know. I just feel like it was a really good experience.
Yeah.
So Cody, was there anything Eden has done that has helped him bond, or did that bond just come after Emmett came?
Yeah. So Eden had the misconception. I've always loved kids. And I thought once I had my child, I would just want to hold him all day, and you know, I wanted this clingy baby that never wanted to go to anyone else. And I expressed that, and then I had Emmett, and I realized I needed breaks and I needed help. And because I'd expressed to Eden that, you know, I wanted to hold my baby all the time, he thought that was not a role he needed to take on. And I saw that and took it as he wants to be an absent father. He's not interested in being a father to our son. And so after a lot of disagreements and a lot of clarification, he took a more active role. And I would say it took him a good 7 months to really bond with Emmett. And once he started getting some personality and playing was a big thing. Like once they could play together. Eden realized, oh, this is actually a human that is learning and growing. And so now I feel like they have a really good relationship, but it took time.
It's like that reward Phil was talking in the episode about, like, it was a thankless job in the beginning and the rewarding moments. And, you know, maybe that's more important for men or for these types of men. For me with TJ, I have realized this recently with breastfeeding that in the beginning we did a lot of we had to do supplementing. We had to do some bottle feeding with breast milk. Cody, thank you for donating that breast milk again.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
But so he was really involved in the feeding of Jamie. And now that Jamie is nursing and latching, we don't do any supplement or anything like that. He doesn't get to feed him as much. And he actually made a comment about that the other day, that he like missed him because he isn't doing the nighttime stuff anymore. He was doing that in the beginning. We're not doing the bottle feeding very much anymore, like maybe once a day, if that. And I just took that in, and I was like, you know what? I don't have to breastfeed him every single time. Like if I'm pumping and he's getting my breast milk and he's bonding with his dad during that time, that's good too. It's not like, because I think was this stigma, or at least for me, it got the stigma of just like breastfeeding naturally, nothing else included, like no bottles, no nipple shield, no nothing, like that's the way to go. But I don't know where that comes from, because it's breast milk that's important, right? Like I don't think there's anything.
There are some benefits to having the skin to skin, but it doesn't mean that anything else is like it's not black and white.
Yeah. And TJ's like on his very own was just like, well, I try to hold him in the same position that he is when you feed him, and you know, he tries to like touch him and stuff and get that skin.
Eden would try to breastfeed him. Did I tell
TJ
you guys
did that too?
Yeah.
I like
walked in the room. I walked in the room and he's like holding Emmett to his chest, and I'm like, what are you doing? Stop. So weird.
We're having a hard enough time as it is. Stop tricking him.
But it's true. We have this like really cool way of calming them and soothing them and bonding with them, and they don't have that. Even with bottles, it's not the same, and that probably is a hard thing for some men to wrap their head around.
Do you think that maybe leads to them wanting to, or maybe not wanting to disconnect, but not being encouraged to overcome that. Like if
that's not my thing. Like saying like, that's not my thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to worry about it.
Yeah. They don't need to like try and overcome these things that we were talking about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I can understand that. Like when I know if I know I'm not going to be able to do something, or quote unquote, not going to be able, I mean, most men can't lactate. So I guess I should say that in this case, that's true. that, you know, it's not going to be, if there was something like that for me where I'm like, there's just no way I'm going to do it. I'm not going to invest my mental whatever. So
I think it's important just to give those bonding moments where you can, as the mom, encourage that in whatever way is best for him to help, because it is going to take some time, and it's going to take more time if they don't have those opportunities.
Yeah. I just want to re-highlight a couple things that have been mentioned. I liked how Cody said that she worked through, you know, they had a lot of discussions, and so it might take you and your partner figuring out your form of communication, and then having some real genuine conversations so that you both are feeling heard, and being as so patient as you can with yourselves and your partner, because it's like this big cluster cuss like for a long time, and it can feel really intense. Yeah,
it's a process.
So
it's not easy.
Just know that we're rooting for you. So thank you for tuning in today. Take care.